meeting of the Village Council of Friendship Heights to order. Make a slight change in the agenda. We're going to turn to Melanie first for an announcement, some mayoral announcements. Melanie, do you want to begin?
Yes, thank you, Michael. Village Council member Kathy Cooper passed away on Saturday, March 6th. Kathy was a dedicated and conscientious member of the Village Council from 2015 until her resignation in January. And more importantly, she was a good friend to many of us. In addition to her council work, Kathy also served for many years as a Willoughby board member. And I know that we will certainly miss her presence here at the Village Center and her many efforts throughout the year on behalf of her community. So I would like to take a moment and honor her with a moment of silence, please.
Thank you for that, Melanie. Speak for all your colleagues by saying that we share your sense of loss. I certainly do.
We have one
Melanie,
more.
do you have? Yes, go ahead, Mayor. Go ahead.
Tonight, we will have the second and final public hearing on the proposed village operating budget for FY 2022. The council will then vote on the budget and tax rate following the hearing.
No other mayoral announcements, Melanie?
That's it.
Okay. The next, I'm going to move to the report of the meeting with the planning board on 5300 Wisconsin Avenue. And then after that report, we'll move to comments from the residents and board members. Let me summarize where we are on 5500 Wisconsin. Let me give you the history of this. Last January BC, in the period before COVID, I, Mayor White, Julian, Bob, and Norm Knopf met with a development group and its attorney about their preliminary plans for the site at 5500 Wisconsin Avenue. Norm, as most of you know, is our attorney on land and development issues. The group requested the meeting because it was in the process of purchasing all the property between the medical building at 5530 Wisconsin Avenue and South Park Avenue, including the Courtyard Hotel. They told us they planned to keep the hotel, but were hoping to construct a condo building on the rest of the site. Their tentative idea at that time was a structure that would have some low-rise elements on Hills Plaza facing the village center and Humphrey Park, and a high-rise element on the part of the parcel that fronted Wisconsin Avenue. The entrance to the proposed building would be on Hills Plaza. Those of us present shared a number of our concerns with the group, especially the height of the building, its inconsistency with the sector plan, and problems of traffic congestion that it would create on South Park and Hills Plaza. They thanked us for the meeting, and then as COVID closed everything down, we heard nothing from them. More recently, there was an announcement in the press, and I'm sure many of you saw it, that the Donahoe Group had closed the deal for the site. Although they had not been back in touch with us, and they still haven't been back in touch with us, Norman Knopf initiated a meeting for us with the staff of the county planning board to discuss the site. I attended the meeting with my colleagues Mike Dorsey and Bruce Pirney, along with Julian Mansfield, Bob Shapiro, and of course Norm. The purpose of the meeting was, in a preemptive manner, to register our concern about what would take place on the site with the staff, with the planning staff, so that these concerns would be on the record when the developers came to the board. Norm made a presentation for us, and relying initially on a series of photographs of our area, demonstrating that a high-rise building on that site would block views from various buildings in the village, as well as one of the few slices of sky that we can see in our increasingly canyonized area. In addition, he discussed the zoning issues and the compatibility of the development with the master plan and the sector plan. He expressed our concern that given various loopholes in the zoning code, the building might well grow to as high as 18 to 20 stories, much more than the 10 stories or 90 feet that's supposed to be the limit. He and the 3 council members present supported his presentation, emphasizing concerns about congestion and the elimination of sunlight from Humphrey Park should such a building be constructed. Norm made a strong and comprehensive case on our behalf, and we are grateful for that. The planning staff were courteous and interested in what Norm and we had to say, as well as and all of our comments. Whether or not our concerns will make a difference is difficult to say. As some of you may know, the board, the planning people have a bias in favor of high-rise development along major routes such as Wisconsin Avenue, especially when they are proximate to the metro and other forms of public transportation. Melanie can say more about this later on when she reports on the Citizen Coordinating Committee meeting on the county's Thrive 2050 plan. The developers will be required to meet with the village council at various points during their discussions with the planning board. I can say that these meetings will be public meetings so that residents as well as council members will have an opportunity to see and respond to their plans. So that's my report. Let me first ask if any of my colleagues at the meeting, Bruce, Mike, and as well as Julian and Bob, have anything to add. I don't think Norm is here at this point. He was going to try to make it, but had another engagement. I don't know, Bruce, Mike, do you have anything to add to that? Nope. Bruce, yes.
Oh, simply that the presentation that Norm gave consisted of photographs taken from various perspectives and illustrating the effect of a high rise on the our ability to see the sky.
Mike, anything to add? Mike?
I would just say what I said after that meeting, that Norman did a masterful job of presenting our position. And I believe we made it clear to the park and planning folks that they would have a robust opposition to putting up a tall high rise there and blocking out the sunlight and so forth. Thank you.
Julian, Bob, anything to add on your part? No. Okay, that's my report on that. Let me now turn to questions and comments from residents on either the 5500 Wisconsin site or, of course, any other issue that you care to comment on. Anybody interested in speaking? Al, go ahead, Al.
Yeah, the only thing I would add, Mr. Chairman, is that when County Councilman Andrew Friedson, thank you. Andrew Friedson spoke. He made clear that he had apparently met or spoken with the developers, and they had told him, this was back in January, that they were going to meet with the village council. It's now been not February, which Councilman Friedson implied was going to be when they contacted the village. I think that's somewhat of concern as far as good faith, since they had met with the council representatives before, and since they had met with Councilman Friedson to obviously get his positive reaction, and he was very positive about that building development, because I actually asked him and pointed out that there was going to be a rather strong disagreement by a number of residents, and he atypically did not make nice. He just thanked me for the comment, and he didn't himself make any comment. So I think that our councilman Friedson is in favor of the proposal, and they've been working with him and gone behind the back of the park and planning people, who apparently, my understanding is, have not met with him yet, not met with the developers yet.
That's our impression. Not about Friedson. I don't have any information on that, Al, but our information from the park and planning people is that the developers have not met with them, and they have guaranteed to us in our conversation last week that they've underlined the fact that they will be required to meet with us as part of their approval process. So I'm very confident they will come back to us. They must do that. They can't move forward unless they talk with us about it. Are there other questions on this issue or any other issue?
My hand.
Oh, I'm sorry. Who's speaking?
Clara Lovett. I raised my hand electronically.
It's hard to see. Are you just on the
Sorry.
phone, Clara?
No.
If you're on the phone, you can't always
Wait.
see the hand raising.
No.
Go ahead, Clara.
I'm on video. Well, you said what I was going to say, that the developer is required to make a presentation, a public presentation to the council.
Mhm.
In the preliminary discussion,
Oh, there you are.
we know that COVID, of course, altered all of the schedules. But when you and the mayor met with the developer more than a year ago, did they give you any idea of their timetable once they had closed the deal on buying the property?
No,
Did they give you an idea, you know?
we got no sense. We got no sense of the timetable, and it was possible that they were going. They hadn't closed the deal yet. So they were all in the very preliminary stages, and then of course when they disappeared during the COVID process, as you know, Clara, on many of these so-called development things, they just evaporate. We don't hear anything further. So I don't think we thought much of it until the article appeared in the press indicated that Donahoe had closed the deal on
But
that
they had
property.
actually, bought the property.
Yeah, and then we assumed that they would be going ahead. I see a hand raised from Cameron Moody. Mr. Moody?
Yes, thank you. I'm a resident of the Elizabeth, and I just wanted to say that as someone who's more of a younger resident, a millennial, I support more development in the neighborhood. I've lived here for a little over 10 years, and my personal feeling is that the neighborhood has kind of gone from stride to slide, and I think that this is an opportunity to have a shot in the arm. I think businesses are closing, and whereas from time to time businesses in Bethesda close, they're quickly replaced. We've had empty storefronts in the neighborhood for years and years, and I don't see that turning around unless we do something that's a catalyst for more. And I think this could be it. And I think we'd be kind of shooting ourselves in the foot if we tried to dampen what could cause some momentum in the neighborhood.
Thank you for that, Cameron. It's obviously it's a position that you're not alone in taking. There is that view among other residents as well. Further comments? I see. I'm looking for hands. I don't see any hands raised at this point. If you're on the phone, just shout out. No? Okay. If that's the case, I'd add one last thing in terms of the Cameron's point, Al's point, and Clara's point. For those of you who didn't see it, the district is talking about increasing density in Northwest Washington, and there was a report in the Washington Post about that, and one of the areas they're targeting is the Mazza Gallery, Lord and Taylor footprint out there, which again, they're thinking in some ways the way the planning board is thinking of looking for density in areas on the major arteries and proximate to metro and mass transit. And so, obviously this is all part of early in the planning process. I don't think we're going to see jackhammers in the ground tomorrow, but in terms of Cameron's point, I think it's whether it's the development of 5300 Wisconsin or down there, sometime over the next bunch of years, we're going to see some increased density in our area. All right, with that said, let's move on to the Secretary's report. Paula?
Thank you. I'm going to move that the council accept the public session minutes of February 8th.
You want to do that separate? Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Melanie is seconded. Any discussion on the public minutes for February 8th? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Go ahead, Clara, Paula.
Yes, I'll move now that the council accept the closed session minutes of February 18th. These had to have some corrections, and I'm proposing that you accept them as corrected.
Okay. The second to that? I need a second.
Second.
I'll second. All those in favor of accepting the minutes as corrected, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Treasurer's report. Melanie, are you going to do this?
Sure. Treasurer's report as of February 28th, 2021, in the general fund, cash on hand, end of last fiscal year, $5,404,223.32. Total cash on hand in the general fund, $5,941,226.16. In the capital improvements fund, cash on hand, end of last fiscal year, $53,342.72. Total cash on hand, capital improvements fund, $15,851.69. In the OPEB trust fund reserve, cash on hand, end of last fiscal year, $1,332.97. Total cash on hand, OPEB trust fund reserve, $1,334.64.
Thanks, Melanie. Are there questions about the treasurer's report? Mike Dorsey? You're muted, Mike. You're muted.
Thank you. Couple things. One, I believe it's been about 2 years since the house that the village owns has had a rental sign up. One company was there for 6 months. I think this one's probably been there a year or more. We don't hear anything about that, any efforts that they're making. I guess I was going to suggest a couple of things. One, if it's unrentable as a commercial site, should we consider renting it out residential? In addition to that, I would think that after a year of hearing nothing from the real estate company, that maybe again, it's time to seek out a new real estate company that might be more aggressive, more interested in making some money and renting our property. So that's one thing. The other thing is, I want to go back to issue that resident brought up 2 months ago regarding the record keeping and the monies that we're receiving from Chevy Chase Land for the bus service. Again, I've looked this last 2 months ago, it was brought up. I still don't see it anywhere. Maybe I'm missing it. Registered in the financial report as revenue. And so I'm wondering, why not? Is there a reason why we don't see it each month? We don't know if I can't tell by looking at this whether we've received it or we have not. That's the second thing. And then the third thing is, I'll probably bring up more under the budget, but this situation with interest income, I've got a lot of questions about that in terms of, as we've learned from one resident that emailed the council, that the return on our money is like 0.2%. And so I have some questions about that. I don't know, is now the best time to do that, or wait for that under the other budget? But I'd like to at least hear about where we stand with the rental house and how we can tell when we're receiving the money from Chevy Chase Land. Thank you.
Julian, Bob, do you want to respond? One of you want to respond to those questions, please?
Julian, you want to respond to 4602 and I'll do the budget?
Yeah, I was just going to suggest the same thing. We have been hearing from the broker at 4602. We have not had anything to bring to the council. It hasn't quite gotten to that to the level of an actual offer. But we've had some queries. And most recently, we do have an interested business that has expressed some interest, that toured the property a couple of times, and we hope it's going to lead to a proposal or a request for a proposal from us. So we would certainly fill in the council at that point. But it hasn't been completely dead, and it hasn't been completely quiet, but nothing that has succeeded in bringing something before the council. But we are hopeful for this latest one. He's expressed a lot of interest, the person that the broker has been dealing with, and a lot of questions back and forth. So stay tuned. I'll just say that, and we will certainly bring it to the council when we have something concrete to present.
Good. Thank you, Julian. Bob, about Mike Doerr's other question about the money from Chevy Chase Land.
On the other two questions, there's a number of ways we could be showing that essentially subsidy of the bus. And in conversations with our auditor, we are showing it as a subsidy to the bus. So the number that's shown as bus expense is net of the amount we get from Chevy Chase Land. That would be $38,900, but it's minus the amount that we get from Chevy Chase Land. I believe that was explained when Dr. Muller brought it up. The interest is, we are in an interest rate environment where the Fed is set zero, and we are very restricted as a state government in terms of what we can invest in. So we've tried to put some money in our primary bank, which pays us at least something, versus our treasuries, which pay us essentially nothing, as does our MLGIP. So our ability to generate interest in this environment, given our restrictions, is minimal. And I wish there was something we could do about it. It's absurd. We're finding it, many of us, on a personal basis, and certainly with even more restrictions, we can't simply go in the stock market or buy bonds or do anything like that. So it's something that I hope will correct itself at some point. But every time we hear the head of the Federal Reserve speak, he says it's going to stay like this for some time.
Mike, do you want to follow up on that? Go ahead.
Are we not allowed to invest in certificates of deposit that are federally insured?
Yes, we are.
Are we invested in them?
No, we haven't found at this point, at least in conversation with Kathy, who was our treasurer for a number of years, it hasn't seemed worth the difference to tie our money up. When we get a new treasurer after the next election, they may have a different opinion of this. As I wish we had gone as interest rates were rising. If you remember, they were rising steadily, not to great heights, but they at least got into over 2 before they came crashing down with the pandemic. So at that point, we can look at 2020 hindsight, well, we should have tied in at 2. But at that time, interest rates were climbing to the point that that did not seem advisable. So we can second guess all we want, but the bottom line is there isn't any interest out there to get right now.
Bruce, go ahead, Bruce.
Mr. Chairman, I would not wish to see a long discussion, hear a long discussion at this point on some of these financial issues. I think they'll take some analysis, perhaps in committee and with options presented to council. I allude in particular to the very constructive and thought-provoking letter that we received recently from Mr. Garg. And considering that our general fund is now, for all purposes, dead money, it's probably not matching the rate of inflation. We need to carefully consider the rationale for maintaining a general fund of particular size. See what is best for our interests, what's really necessary. That's not something I would want to discuss now in open council. It really takes some critical analysis at the treasurer's level, and perhaps it'll be a few months before something concrete will be presented to the council. But it's certainly long since time that we took this issue very seriously. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, my view as well is that there are issues that we talk about, and we have a committee, a finance. Am I right, Melanie? Finance committee. I always lose track.
We do. Kathy was the chair of the finance committee.
I think the questions that Mr. Garg raised and some of the questions that Mike and Bruce are raising are questions that we should bring to that committee and have a more detailed discussion of in committee, and then bring them back to the council if there are specific proposals that we in the plenary session of the council can act upon. Okay. Any other questions on the treasurer's report? We'll get to the budget in a second. Mr. Garg, we'll get to the budget in a second, and there'll be public comments on the budget. We're not quite at the budget. Okay. Anything else on the treasurer's report? Okay, now's the chance. We now have our final public hearing on the proposed budget and tax rate for fiscal year 2022. The budget is based on a proposed tax rate of 4 cents per $100 of assessed property value, maintaining the current rate. The public is invited to submit verbal comments as recognized by the chair. Verbal comments will be limited to 3 minutes. No one may cede time to another speaker. So the floor is now open to public comments on the budget. Mr. Garg, go ahead. You've been waiting patiently.
You know, I'm a new resident to the village. We just moved about 1 year ago, so please excuse me if I'm saying something which shows my ignorance. But looking at the report and the budget proposals, I was struck by a couple of things, and in fact, some of the speakers have already mentioned. The size of the reserves which we are carrying seems to be really, at least I could not find any reasonable justification for why we would be sitting on $6 million, which is more than 2 years of recurrent expenditures, and there was no explanation given at all of what our anticipated capital needs are, which should be dictating what service size we should be maintaining. So I think that would be helpful. But I was also struck by how little we were returning somebody earning on this. You know, again, I think that is the issue in raise. So I just want to reinforce that. And thirdly, in light of you know, your very prudent management in the past, is it appropriate this time that since we are sitting on such a pot of money which is depreciating over time, to really find some way of returning this money to the residents through tax holiday, through whatever mechanism creative minds can think of? I'm sure lawyers and accountants can find a way of getting around the regulations to send some of the money back to the residents. That's what I wanted to say. I
Thank you,
sent a
Mr.
note
Gard.
to the council, so my comment should be there on the record.
Yeah, and your comments will be taken up very seriously by the Finance Committee when we look at this more generally, because they're important points. Julian, Bob, do you have any just preliminary responses to the questions that Mr. Gard has raised?
This is Bob, only in the sense that everything we do needs to be looked at in light of the fact that we are a special tax district, not a municipality, and what our charter from the state says we can do and not do. I've been around for close to 25 years. We have not always been this flush. When I first came on, in fact, we were having difficulty paying our bills. So as a special tax district, we have to tax. Otherwise, we essentially have no reason to exist, and we are bringing our tax to the lowest possible number, and that's where it stayed for years. This is a complex question and excellent questions being asked. And we forget every once in a while that people coming into the village new who are interested in this don't have that perspective. And we certainly intend to prepare a response to the questions that were asked that will give that perspective. And then I think the idea of having a new finance committee get into this and come up with whatever they'd like to come up with is excellent. New eyes on this are excellent. But the idea of, gee, we could have done it, but we didn't, always has a reason why we didn't. And we are fairly restricted in terms of what we can do, what we can't do. We've stretched that in many ways. But our charter is the basis of our existence, and we are created and can be uncreated by the state. So that's really all I can say right now, except that I think the path forward that's been suggested is an excellent one.
Thank you, Bob. Any other comments from the, I'll get back to you in a second, Mike. Any other resident comments on the budget? Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I recall this issue being raised somewhat, probably 3-4 years ago. And it strikes me that, and I'm all for Councilman Perney's recommendation for a look at this through the Finance Committee, but it does strike me that with $6 million, maybe we need to have in those discussions some investment expert, or, and I don't even know which category that would fall in finance, but somebody that's an expert in the field of handling $6 million to give us an overview or insight as to what we're doing with the money or not doing with the money.
I agree, Mike, and I think that would be part of the charge to the Finance Committee to work on this and come back with proposals and plenty of time for the new council to deal with it in the next budget cycle. Other questions from the floor? Seeing none, can I have a motion to approve the budget for the fiscal year 2022? Melanie's moved to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Paul is second. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, unanimously approved. We're on to committee reports. Melanie report.
Michael?
I'm sorry. What did I miss?
Don't forget to
We have to vote on the tax rate.
Oh, I thought that's we approved the budget. I'm sorry. You're right. I mean, we can't just spend, we have to actually tax as well. I have a motion to approve the tax rate as proposed in the budget.
I'll move.
Paul is moving, second. Bruce is seconded. All those in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you for that reminder, Bob. Committee reports, Melanie, Community Advisory Committee.
Community Advisory Committee met on March 3rd, and among the topics discussed was the location of the village council election. Will there be voting at the center? Will that be an option? And there was discussion of whether or not judges and clerks are required by our charter. Right now, there's a pathway to the Chevy Chase office building, sort of for jaywalkers, and we were notified that the building owner will not be rejuvenating that, and residents are encouraged not to take that shortcut. There was a suggestion that the village shuttle bus continue to go to the West Bar Giant after whatever grocery store in the Chevy Chase collection opens. There was discussion about the driveway lights at 4620 being too bright, with complaints from 4620. And Bill Corey, a CAC member, is going to check with a 4620 board member. And there was also a suggestion that we reinstitute quarterly building manager lunches at the village center on Zoom with the village manager to network. And the next CAC meeting is April 7th at 5:15 p.m.
Thank you, Melanie. The Program Advisory Committee?
Program Advisory Committee met on March 4th, and among the program suggestions was to have an Audubon bird walk, a lecture with binoculars, followed by a casual lunch. There was also a suggestion to hand out plain white masks and ask residents, and especially children, to decorate these masks just for fun and to string them up on a cord across the width of the auditorium, including near the ground, so that children walking by can easily see them. We had a suggestion for a seminar called Let's Organize Our Tax Paperwork for Next Year. A suggestion for a seminar on orchids and their history. For an art display, look on the bright side. We had one resident ask for a Zoom Q&A on how to navigate the vaccine websites. And we also had some of our college-age members who have college-age friends who would like to volunteer to write letters to Brighton Garden residents who would like to be pen pals. And I think we're going to definitely institute that idea. And the next meeting, I think, will be sometime in May.
Some interesting ideas for the program committee. That's
Definitely.
terrific.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And finally, Melanie, you're still on the Citizens Coordinating Committee of Friendship Heights.
They had their regular monthly meeting on Wednesday, February 17th. And they delved into the Public Information Act documents regarding the Capitol Crescent Trail crossing at Little Falls Parkway. They paid over $1,000 for this Public Information Act, and I think that the final consensus was that they really did not get the information that they were looking for. If you're interested in this, they have put everything on the CCCF website, and it's easier to read it than it is to try to summarize multiple PDF documents. We also talked about the zoning text amendment, ZTA 20-01, where the planning board will decide whether or not to allow solar panels to be installed on the agricultural reserve. This has been a contentious issue, and 60 local organizations supported this compromise bill. Councilmember Hans Riemer initially sponsored the bill, but then backed away from his original position. The recap of council hearing on ZTA 20-07. At the hearing, 49 residents testified for 2 minutes each, and there were 22 people testifying against the ZTA. And the 27 people that were in favor of it were speaking as individuals and wanted affordable housing. And I think that's it. The next regular monthly meeting for the CCCFH is Wednesday, March 17th.
Melanie, do you want to say something about the special meeting with Meredith Wellington?
Yes, the CCCFH also met on Tuesday, March 2nd with Meredith Wellington and Claire Isley from the County Executive's Office. And the sole focus of that meeting was Thrive Montgomery 2050, which is a 30-year plan that will accompany the general plan. And in a nutshell, what it means is for single-family communities, this would change the entire fabric of those communities by allowing multiple rise units to be built where typically single-family homes have been. It is a very hot issue in the county, and it seems to change day by day. They've tried to get it postponed because of COVID. There's been community activists who have felt that they have not been given an adequate amount of time to present their objections in a setting that really is conducive to community feedback. But the county is not postponing it. And so right now, the best that people can do is to write letters. And again, if you are interested in this topic, please go to the CCCFH website and you can read multiple documents on Thrive Montgomery 2050. It's an ongoing issue, and I think you'll be hearing about this for a long time.
I should say as well, I attend, oh, go ahead, Julie. You want to add something? Go ahead.
Actually, it's not on that topic, so I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I've got something to add on the topic of judges in the election.
Hang on just a second. Hang on with that. I just wanted to add something to, I attended the same meeting that Melanie attended about Thrive 2050. And one of the implications of this ties in back to our discussion of 5300 Wisconsin, is that the main thrust, one of the main thrusts of Thrive 2050 is heavy urbanization on the major arteries, such as Wisconsin Avenue. They're looking to the future in terms of high-rise developments close to metro stops. And I think, although they do want to make some changes to single-family communities, there's also they want to funnel the density into already dense areas which are close to mass transit. And so that I'm not sure how many of us will be around in 2050, but in any event, this is the how should I say it? I don't mean to be negative. But it's the bias of the planning of the current regime and the planners that's what they're looking toward, and they're trying to avoid urban sprawl and the sense of concentrating the urbanism in areas which are already urban, and not have suburban sprawl out in the countryside. And I think that has implications certainly in the long term for our area, and perhaps in the short term as well, as it connects with what the plans are in DC for upper Wisconsin Avenue. So that's all I want to add to that. It's an interesting thrust that the planners have here. Julian, go on. You wanted to raise about the, do you want to hold if it's about the election, why don't we wait until we get to the item on old business, Julian, and we can talk about the election judges at that point, okay?
Okay.
All right. We're now at old business, and the first item on old business is update to the community on village response to the coronavirus. Julian, are you doing that, or is Ann doing that, or you're both doing that?
You can both do it. I'm on also, so Julian, did you want to
Okay.
say anything, or do you want me to go ahead?
Oh, well, let me just say on the vaccine, which I'm sure is what everybody's most interested in. We are continuing our, full court push to try to get a vaccine clinic at the Village Center or at the Wisconsin Place Center. We were initially told by Giant Pharmacy that we could expect to have the clinic at the center. Only to be told later that, they were backing away from that position because we didn't meet the guidelines from the state. We had to get some type of state approval for a priority location. The state and the county continue to prioritize what they call underrepresented areas with either poverty or high level of minorities or otherwise disadvantaged communities. And it has appeared that just the age of the residents and the fact that we have a significant number of elderly in itself was not sufficient to convince them to have a clinic for us. But we have reached out to all of the county, state, and local elected officials, including federal officials, Senator Van Hollen, Congressman Jamie Raskin, Delegate Ariana Kelly from our state delegation has submitted a letter on our behalf with the entire District 16 delegation pushing the State Department of Health to approve a clinic in Friendship Heights. We are hopeful that's still going to happen, but we still don't have anything to announce as of tonight.
Thank you, Julian. And Ann, do you want to ask?
Yes,
Go ahead.
I'll just go ahead and talk about some of the programs that are coming up. So we continue to offer online classes, tours, and lectures, including Zoom tutorials. Tomorrow at 11, we have a virtual tour of the Baseball Hall of Fame with a focus on civil rights. On Wednesday, March 11th at 1, we have a suburban lecture on caring for your skin. On Thursday, March 18th at 1, Ji-Mei Kwang, who is an artist, a writer, a dissident from Myanmar, will discuss the crisis in that country. On March 25th at 2, we have a virtual tour of the Baltimore Museum of Industry. And then in April, we have Cheryl Morris is hosting a class on getting to know your iPhone. And then the shredding truck is coming on Thursday, March 15th from 5 to 7. It'll be on Friendship Boulevard, adjacent to the center. Tuesday, April 20th at 3, we have a virtual tour of the Utah Folk Museum. And then on Thursday, April 29th at 7 p.m., we have a family-friendly comedy night with the Improv. That's via Zoom, and it's in celebration of National Humor Month. I have been in contact with a number of instructors to determine when they're available to return to teach, if they're still interested in teaching, and I'm working on proposed schedules so that we're not scrambling once we're permitted to open. I'm also working with some performers to determine their availability and also whether they're willing to perform indoors if we had to move the outdoor concerts inside. Again, this is once state and local officials permit these. And then also last Friday evening, the village participated in a statewide COVID-19 memorial by placing amber-colored luminaries along the fountain in Hubert Humphrey Park and in the windows of the Village Center. And we've uploaded photos of that memorial on our website.
And there's a question in the chat section, and I was going to ask the same thing. My impression was that the shredding truck came after tax day, not before tax day. Is this a change?
That's what I have on the schedule. Julian, did you want to talk about that at all? The shredding truck?
Yeah, that's the date. It's the 15th of April.
Yes.
It's 15th of April. Oh, good. So Ann said,
I was-
she misspoke and she said 15th of March, right?
Oh, no, I
15th.
apologize. I'm sorry. It's the 15th of April. I'm sorry.
Oh, good. Good to know. I wasn't going to get my taxes done in the next 2 days. So.
I'm sorry. I've got March on my mind. I apologize. April 15th.
Thanks for the clarification, Ann. Jewel, are there other questions on the COVID issue? Julian, maybe it's been raised by council members, and perhaps you can indicate what the constraints are in terms of us opening the village center, who makes that decision, and what we know about that.
Yeah, well, I just did a quick poll of some of the nearby towns and what they were doing, and they seem to be following the county guidelines as well. And there's no indication from the county about reopening. The only things that have opened in the county, and there are only a few of them, are selected recreation centers that just opened in the last week for a very limited schedule of a couple of days a week with scheduled by appointments for use only. And there's only something like 6 or 7 of those across the county that have been allowed to reopen just for that purpose. The county government buildings, and all the town halls and the community centers remain closed. So there's no indication of exactly when that would be reversed. But the people in the towns are following the county guidelines as well.
Okay. Questions on this? Mike, go ahead, Mike.
Are we still on COVID?
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Yes, I want to say I appreciate all the discussions and conversations that people have had over the last couple months in regards to attempting to have our residents vaccinated. But, and I believe I appreciate the full court press, but I'm a firm believer in that if you don't put it in writing and they have to respond to it, you don't get the best effort. So I'm going to, I'd like to make a motion to send a letter to all federal, state, and county elected representatives who have constituents in the village of Friendship Heights to advocate on our behalf to ask both state and county agencies involved with COVID-19 vaccine disbursement to prioritize all of our residents 65 years of age and older to be vaccinated utilizing the village center.
Bruce, go ahead, Bruce.
Yeah, I would like to speak to this issue.
Well, hold on. Mike's made a motion, so do we have a
Yes.
second? Are you seconding it?
I second the motion.
Okay, go ahead.
I would like to speak to this issue, which I think is very close to our hearts. Now, all of us have gone through this epidemic in an individual, personal way. And I think we all know that if you stood back and tried to follow the guidelines and acted as in a passive way, just a good citizen waiting to be called, you wouldn't be called. That's not what any of us did. I, like so many of us, have been vaccinated, both shots, 2 weeks hence, and I didn't do it by waiting for anyone to call me. I don't think I did anything illegal. I don't apologize for my conduct, but I certainly wasn't passive. And I think few of us were. I think the same thing applies on the communal level. I would be far more satisfied with the rationale given by Giant if I did not see other communities, perhaps arguably less deserving than our own in this area, who have received doses of vaccine. I think our case is much stronger and needs to be made. It's time urgent. A few months from now, it's a closed issue. The train may already have left the station and they'll simply have to go elsewhere to Wisconsin Place. We've missed an opportunity to serve our residents as they deserve. Now, you know, I don't wish to say anything pejorative about anything that's been done in this regard, but simply that we need to be assertive. And that is why I have very gladly seconded the motion made by the previous speaker. And in conclusion, just one thing. I was out for a moment, so someone said this before. Please bear with me. We must be absolutely sure that all of our residents who may have heard of the possibility of using the center fully understand that they should look elsewhere. They should not wait for us. We may never be able to open the center for vaccination, which would be lamentable. But let's be sure no one's waiting for that to happen. Do our damnedest to get it done, but don't let anyone think that it's an assured thing. Thank you.
I just say a few things. I agree with your analysis, Bruce, of getting the vaccine. I think, although I must say that as soon as Susan and I were able to get the vaccine, being aggressive, we in fact did get called from some lists. So some people are being called. I think many are called, but few are chosen, as the phrase goes. But in terms of Mike's motion, which I have no problem with, I think most of Julian's communications have been in writing to our state representatives, to the various people at the state level, and also to Congressman Raskin and the people on the county council. Isn't that? It's correct. I'm correct in saying that, Julian, right? Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to add, we actually forwarded the letter that the state delegates wrote on our behalf to the State Department of Health. We sent that letter to the County Council at Large, County Council Friedson, and Senator Van Hollen and Congressman Jamie Raskin. The letter that was written on our behalf by the District 16 delegation.
So there have been written communications. This is not all just telephone calls. This is all written communications. Go ahead, Mike.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate the effort by Julian. However, we are a council. And in my view and my experience dealing in Annapolis County Council, District of Columbia, it's always best to come on a letterhead from the council or the elected body. Just for some residents that may not know, the census indicates that we are the most densely populated place in the country, including Manhattan. So we are essentially living in a petri dish. We have only been as safe as we have been because of our fabulous constituents that continue to wear the masks and safe distance and so forth. But having said that, I wholeheartedly appreciate Delegate Kelly's email that I received. That's the only one, where she indicated clearly that it wasn't the state's responsibility to decide how it was distributed in counties, but it was the counties. And that's why I suggest we send it to both state and county. Just for your information, I'm getting my first shot tomorrow. And for the residents out there, as Councilman Perney said, residents have told me they're waiting for the vaccine to come to the village center. I highly recommend that you do not wait. Do not wait, because it very likely won't happen. We know that Somerset's got it exclusively, Sumner Village got it exclusively, and we have a higher demographic of people over the age of 65 than both of those communities. However, I really believe that we need to let all of the elected officials know by writing and get their responses back to us. That's the only way that we're going to get any type of prioritization. I don't see it any other way. Thank you.
My own view is I agree that it's fine to write letters. I'm not as proud of what the letters I've read the responses I've seen from our state representatives they point to the county council and the county government. County government responses have been pointing to the state. And then the only thing the two of them can agree on is it's all the fault of the federal government. So there's a lot of finger pointing and a lot of, shall we say, rear covering. I don't want to use the other term in terms of what our representative has been doing. Having said that, I'm perfectly willing to support the idea of still another letter. I know Melanie has written directly to, as mayor, has written to the Mark Elrich, and so there are other letters have gone out over Melanie's signature. But if there are people who haven't been written to over the mayor's signature, then we can send additional letters.
Mr. Chairman, have they gone
Yes.
out on behalf of the council? If they have, I've missed them.
But I don't know that they've been shared with the council, but I'm sure they can be shared with the council. They're not, for anything the mayor sends this respect is available to the council.
Well, if it's going out on a council letterhead, I would think that we would all see them. Thank you.
Let's, I mean, I'm not sure we need a vote here. Let's say that there's a consensus that we will write to everybody who hasn't been written to and share those things that have been written with all the council members. Is that satisfactory, Mike and Bruce? Okay, let's move on. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, are you having comments on COVID from the audience?
I wasn't intending to, Al, but if you have a brief one, go ahead. We need to move
Yeah,
on. Go ahead.
I want everyone to remember that our center is not a county center. We paid for it. We, our constituents, our taxpayers, paid for the center, and we maintain it. And what the state and the county give are guidelines. We can decide, you can decide as our representatives when you want to open the center partially or completely, looking at the guidelines. You've already done that. You had the center open for flu shots. And obviously, when it's open, you have to take precautions with masks. But if you want to open the center, I'm sure for something like COVID, you can have the same sort of precautions that we have when we go to the grocery store where we don't have appointments. And you can do the same thing for the election in May. I am very disappointed that there constantly is the feeling, we'll wait and see what the state tells us we can do. We don't wait for the state.
Well, I think there are two things involved now. First of all, there's no question that if we had clearance to do a COVID vaccine clinic in the village center, we would do it, just as we've done the other thing. The question of whether or not we can do it as a voting place, I'm not entirely sure you're correct that it's our decision about whether we can do that or not do that. But should we get to that point, we can ask, we can seek legal counsel on your point. Thanks. Let's move on to discussion of public.
I'm sorry to interrupt you while you're speaking. This is your minute taker.
I'm sorry. Is somebody? Oh, the minute taker. Yes, go ahead.
Yes, sir. Was the motion from Mr. Dorsey rescinded?
Yeah, I think Mike, you agreed. We don't need to vote on that motion, and you agreed to that.
No, yes.
Okay.
Yes, it's been rescinded. Thank you for clarifying.
Would you mind restating once more what the consensus was for the minute?
I can't. Could you speak a little louder? Or can't quite hear you.
Oh, sure. Is this any better?
That's better.
Okay. Would you mind restating for the minutes just so that I get it clear what you're agreeing to do?
We're agreeing to send letters to everybody who has not been sent the letter already by the mayor. We will send additional letters to those folks, and we'll share with all council members the letters that have been sent. That's our agreement.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Moving on to old business again, discussion of publication of candidate statement for village council elections and other issues, I take it, around about the election. To begin with, we have a in the packet, we have a proposal from the League of Women Voters to put together I'm not sure what they're calling it, a voter education document is what they're calling it, with a statement from each candidate, a picture of each candidate with the statement, and a character limit, 1,000 characters, not including spaces in the document. And they will put this together for us. They will do no editing. They will simply make sure that it is within the appropriate word limit. So that's the first part of this discussion. Are there any concerns about the League proposal? Okay, can we take it in pieces then? All those in favor of doing it as the League suggests in this proposal, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, so we've disposed of that. The second issue is one that I think that I've raised. This maybe goes back to the point that Al Moeller was raising and others have raised about whether or not we will be able to use the Village Center as a place for in-person voting. We all hope that we can, but as I said in a memo to my colleagues, if this year has proven anything, hoping doesn't make it so, and we're not sure what is going to happen, and there is still a possibility, I say a possibility, that we may have to have an entirely mail-in voting election. If that's the case, it's my concern that we need to be more aggressive in publicizing that and making sure that people are able to get the absentee ballot forms and have a way of getting it back. To that end, as one of our residents proposed in a communication to all of us, and it seems a fairly easy thing to do, rather than having people have to download the application from the website or call the village to have the application sent to them, a suggestion that we simply make copies of a sufficient number of copies of the application and drop those copies off to the buildings. People know they're there, which will make it easier for people to actually file for an absentee ballot. The second suggestion I would make, and Julian, I thought I remembered this, but perhaps I am misremembering things. I thought at one point you said that we could have a place to drop off completed ballots in a ballot box up at the center, just as we did in the November election, so people would not have to mail the ballots back, but could actually drop them off. Is that still a live possibility?
Yeah, we're working out an arrangement with Montgomery County to be able to borrow one of their drop boxes, which has actually been used for a couple of other municipal elections. So we would be able to provide that. There's a little question about how we're going to secure it and where it's going to be placed, but we're working through that. And so the drop box should be in place around the time of the production of the ballots, which will be the filing deadline is April 2nd. It'll probably take several days to print the ballots, so the ballots should be available sometime that first week in April. And then the league will be mailing the ballots back to everybody who's requested an absentee ballot.
Excellent. Is there support for the idea of copying the ballots and dropping them off, copying the applications for the ballots, dropping them off in the buildings so that residents can pick them up there? Are there any concerns or objections to that? Seeing none, Julian, can we do that? Go ahead.
How many are we talking about?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I'd say start off with maybe 30, 40 a building, and then if they run out, they can call and ask for more. Unlike unlike the Republicans in Georgia, I believe in people having the opportunity to vote. So let's make it easier rather than more difficult for people to do this. I think the other thing is, even if we're open for in-person voting, I think the experience of the last election, a lot of people come to enjoy the absentee ballot part of it and would prefer to do those sorts of things, even if it's safe to come up to the center to do it. So I think this is a good thing to do. Okay, are there other, now you had an issue about the judges. Go ahead, Julie.
Just to add to the issue that was brought up at the Community Advisory Committee about the appointment of judges, and I did get some clarification from the League of Women Voters representative today, and they are okay with village resident judges being present for the ballot count at a safe distance.
Oh, good.
So we can appoint village election judges as the council has in the past. It's not specifically required in the charter. The charter says the council shall appoint judges and clerks, and that's typically been interpreted as clerks being the League of Women Voters and judges being the village. But you know, the league can also provide judges. But anyway, since it's been clarified that judges would be allowed in the room, but not peering over their shoulder, but at a safe distance, the council can appoint citizen judges, which you can do at the April meeting.
Okay, good to do that. Are there other questions about the election? Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, first one, when you say judges would be allowed in the room, what room are you speaking of?
The village center is where the count will take place the night of the election.
Other questions? Bruce, go ahead.
Was the one who moved that we have these printed statements, because I thought it unlikely that we'd be able to open the center for a candidates night. That would be 100 or more people in a closed space for over an hour, and I don't think we want to do that. On the in contrast to that, I think an election, if we extrapolate current trends into the future, will be perfectly safe by 10th of May. And I do hope that we'll be quite adamant in our dealings with anyone who tries to tell us otherwise, unless, of course, God forbid, there should be a new outbreak with a new strain or something that really does make it risky. Present trends indicate we should have no problem. And just to conclude on those statements and pictures, I wanted to do it in a different way, but I'm perfectly agreeable to the way it's being done. And I think it will answer the purpose admirably. I have myself already submitted a statement and a picture, found it very easy to do, a few minutes time. And I think we're performing an excellent public service to at least make people aware that we're alive, you know. Many seem unacquainted with that fact, and I would like to disabuse themselves of the notion that there is no council, that this is all done in some mysterious fashion. Let me just say from the heart, there is a question of democratic legitimacy. Every one of us sitting on the council now would feel better if we had a broader basis of legitimacy. That is to say, interested voters who know us, appreciate what we're doing, and voted for us for that reason. And this may be a minuscule step, but at least to make them acquainted with us, I think, is an important public service. Thank you.
Reports the death of the council have been greatly exaggerated. To coin a phrase. Go ahead, Paula.
Yes, I was wondering, since we're going to be distributing a general, I guess, a general document on everyone, can we still distribute our own document?
I don't think one can prevent somebody from distributing their own document. I would hope, or at least my assumption would be, that this document would suffice. but if you can't stop people from campaigning. And if people want to campaign and want to distribute their own document, my own view is that there's nothing to stop anybody from doing that. Does anybody have a different view?
No.
No. Still a semi-free country.
The group document, how will that be distributed?
Go ahead, Julian.
We told the league it'll be distributed like the village newsletter. It'll just be distributed. It'll be dropped off to us from the league's printer that they're using, and then we're going to deliver it to the buildings as we do the newsletter. So it would be one for
Okay, so
the same distance.
that's going to be different in every building then. In our building, it would go into our individual boxes.
Yeah, what the buildings do with them.
Yeah, exactly.
Can I just add one point on
Sure, Julian, go ahead.
the voting in person question? The agreement that the council approved with the league specifies that the decision has to be made at least 3 weeks in advance of the election. So 3 weeks before May 10th would need to be the decision date for holding in person, which would be after the April council meeting. The language also states that the league will accommodate that request if there's assurance from the county health department about the safety of voters and election workers. So some type of county guidance will be requested if the council is looking to hold an in-person election.
Appreciate that, Julian. Let's do it this way. Let's agree to revisit this topic at the April meeting. If we're still unsure, if something happens beyond, we can certainly have a special meeting the next week to make a final decision. We appreciate you reminding us of that. Yes, Mike. Go ahead, Mike.
Just two things. One, I was going to suggest that in the interim between now and then, when this health expert makes the decision, that that the village find out what the requirements are. For example, in restaurants, the 6-foot distance that they set up and so forth. The health department might have some guidance in it, although I'm not convinced, because the health department didn't even know that Somerset House and Sumner Village got priority vaccination. So I don't know what experts they are. Maybe they'll be better at this. But I suggest in the interim that we find out what that is and prepare for it.
Seems reasonable. Anything else on the election? Okay. Discussion of village security measures. Julian has included in our packet a very detailed proposal from our firm Securitas for cameras in various places. The suggestion from Councilman Perney that we have a small group subcommittee that would look at this proposal and analyze it for us, because it's a very detailed proposal. There are a number of questions to be raised, and rather than deal with that in a plenary session, we should have a report from a committee and then deal with it at the next meeting. If that's acceptable to everybody, I would suggest that because this is these are going to be hanging on our light posts and using the power from the light posts and all of that, that we refer this to the infrastructure committee. If you think that's a bad idea, we can create a new 3-person committee to look at this. Infrastructure committee to take the security proposal under advisement. I see nobody shaking their head no. Mr. Perney, as chair of the infrastructure committee, get to work. Okay, refer to the infrastructure committee. New business. Discussion of proposals for fountain and irrigation maintenance contract. Julian.
Yeah, this is a a 3-year contract to maintain the fountain and also the 4 irrigation systems in the three public parks that we have and the small irrigation system at the house at 4602 North Park. That's all covered under this contract. And essentially, it's the bulk of the work is maintaining the fountain, both turning it on and winterizing it and coming out weekly to clean it. The irrigation systems is basically turning them on and closing them, and then making repairs as needed. We've had for many years Color Irrigation, who's done wonderful work for us, and they submitted a bid which is unchanged from the last 3 years, with the exception of Page Park, which is added as a new irrigation system. We didn't have that 3 years ago. So his price has gone up slightly because of that. So the total is $12,822 per year and that's fixed for the 3 years. And we did get another bid from a company that we were not familiar with. It was cheaper, but we did not really have any comfort level with them and had no prior experience with them. So we're recommending the council continue with Dave Color for the irrigation maintenance.
Questions to Julian? Do I hear a motion
Motion.
to accept the, go ahead, Mike, say the whole thing for the pro.
I make a motion that we accept the proposal that's been placed before us for the maintenance of the fountain and the irrigation system.
By the proposal from Color Irrigation Company. We have that minute taker, Color Irrigation. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Bruce has seconded. Dorsey's made the motion. Further discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Is there any further business? That's the end of the agenda items. Any further business, anything else that has to be or should be discussed? Seeing none, again, everybody get your shots if you can, and have a good rest of the march, and thank you all for your participation tonight. Motion to adjourn. I need a motion. Mike's made a motion. Melanie seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Thanks you, everybody.
Thank
you,
you.
Michael.
Mm.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
All right.